Good afternoon, everyone. We're here with Bright Talk at AWS reInvent 2018. My name is Eric Brady. I write about DevOps and digital transformation, and today we are going to ask an expert. I've got with me Mohit Mehta from SignalFx. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about what SignalFx does.
Yeah, so I'm a director of product at SignalFx, and I run the distributed tracing microservices APM product at SignalFx. And SignalFx is a real-time cloud monitoring platform built on streaming analytics. The founders were at Facebook in the mid-2000s, where essentially they built the monitoring platform for Facebook as Facebook scaled from tens to 100 million users to about 1 billion. And they had the culture of move fast, break things. And so they were essentially charged with building a platform that the service owners could use to monitor in real time, the service Facebook itself. And sort of 5 years back, they essentially left Facebook, started the company so we could provide similar capabilities to the rest of the world.
Outstanding. As we all know, microservice architectures are definitely on the rise. And IDC has predicted that 90% of applications are going to be using microservice architectures in the next 3 years. What's driving that, and do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, we see that a lot in our customer base. But if you step back, right, you notice that every industry is becoming more software oriented. So whether that's media with ESPN or Disney, where they used to deliver their content over cable TV, they're now doing so or thinking about increasingly delivering that over a mobile app. Or it's banks where the primary interface they had with their customers was based on the physical location where customers showed up. Now increasingly it's the app, the mobile app, and also on the retail side, right? You've got companies like Gap. Their CEO recently announced that they're going to close down a bunch of stores so they can focus more and more on e-commerce. And there's Nike that was here doing a session yesterday that talked about their own digital transformation and how they went from 0 to about 3.5 billion in e-commerce revenue, right? So the larger theme here is like the world's getting more software oriented, and the benchmark for what software applications and experiences are set by essentially the biggest digital companies in the world, right? So whether that's Facebook or Google or Netflix, it's about on demand. Up all the time, spontaneous, instant gratification. And if you think about how these companies have built, these sophisticated applications, they've sort of followed, three big trends. One is the availability of highly ephemeral dynamic infrastructure, so available on demand when the service team needs it. The second is the application itself. What used to be a monolith is broken up into tens, if not hundreds of services. And then third, it's the ability for each service team to operate independently so they can push code to production much faster and operate at the agility required by the business to deliver more and more innovation at a faster pace, right? So that's sort of how what the companies that are outside of the largest digital companies are trying to emulate.
Got it. Microservices are without doubt gaining momentum, and there are, with this increased complexity, there's increased risk, but there's also increased reward. What challenges do companies and the operators on the ground face when implementing microservices architectures?
Yeah, so if you think about the environment of what used to be a monolith application running on a few servers or VMs on-prem, primarily written in a single language, and code release is happening every quarter, maybe half yearly. From that world, you need to operate in a way where the infrastructure is on demand and spinned up whenever the service team needs it. The second thing is the application itself is fundamentally changing into distributed services, and you've got CI/CD processes happening, right? So the environment fundamentally has changed from what used to be a low volume static environment to a highly volatile, high velocity, ephemeral environment, right? And that brings in the needs for new monitoring requirements. And the new monitoring requirements are the ability to ingest at hyperscale, hyperscale amount of data. Number two, detect things in real time so that you can, understand when containers go up and down, before they impact your service, like what's going on. And then lastly, it's all about not only understanding what's going on in real time at hyperscale in just volume, but it's primarily about analytics applied on top. So you're not worried about a single host going down. You're worried about whether a customer has a impact on a customer impacting problem is happening or not. Like a host going down is sort of irrelevant anymore. Yeah. So the fundamental change in environment essentially is generating these new requirements for the new world.
Understood. So how does SignalFx address these challenges for your customers?
Yeah, so we've been in the business for last 5 years. We built a streaming metrics analytics platform, and our customers use us to have visibility across the entire stack. So whether that's ephemeral infrastructure, whether that is databases or middleware, whether that is distributed services, or even their CI/CD pipeline, right? So, and we've had the metrics as a way to understand your complete stack for the last 5 years. And the challenges I talked about, right? Hyperscale ingest, real-time detection, applying analytics on top, all of that's been available to our customers via our metrics platform. What we're doing in addition to that is that in addition to monitoring each component in your environment independently and understanding in real time where there might be a problem, what we're doing now is we're introducing a new product which is built on distributed tracing. It's, we refer to it as Microservices APM. And what that does is, in addition to the individual components, we're able to capture dependencies end-to-end and understand what end-to-end transactions look like, understand the dependencies horizontally between services, but also for each service, what the underlying infrastructure looks like. So we're able to quickly isolate where the problem might be with this new functionality.
Excellent. APM as a space is currently pretty crowded. What is it about the way that the majority of providers do APM that's not going to work in this new world, and what is it about Microservices APM from SignalFx that's going to do a much better job? Yeah,
so like you said, I mean, APM's been around for a decade or so, right? So what's different is that the initial sort of versions of APM were built for basically a very different world. It was a world, like I spoke before, it was a world where a single application, sort of with tens of instances in a single language on fairly small number of hosts existed, right? And what the solutions at the time, were basically geared towards providing an agent to the ops team so they could drop it onto a host. They could watch that, static process. They could do some basic correlation, and all the secret sauce of those APM solutions was built in what we think of as the intelligent host agent, right? It was that proprietary agent that not only detected things on the host, the languages, but also did the instrumentation and also did some basic analytics. As you move more and more towards highly distributed services and microservices, what we've noticed in our customer base is customers aren't waiting for vendors anymore to provide them with instrumentation. In fact, the whole notion of DevOps is getting more developers and service owners involved. And as that happens, people tend to use much more open instrumentation frameworks. So whether that's open tracing or open census or Zipkin, and in some cases, we've got customers that have developed their own instrumentation. So they're not relying on vendors for data collection. Data collection is essentially commoditized. Right. So that secret sauce is fast, eroding for the existing vendors. Second, the value is shifting to data analytics, right? It's the analysis that you can do once you get the data. That's what matters. And the existing vendors weren't built for highly ephemeral environments. They don't have low latency, high resolution abilities. And that's where they struggle in these new environments.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about the analytics capabilities that make Microservices APM different.
Yeah, so actually, going to the main product, we already have customers who use metrics as a way to monitor their applications. But in addition to that, now that we capture transactions, the first thing that we heard from customers was, with existing solutions for customers who've either used a DIY tool or if they've been using one of the traditional tools, one of the big problems they had was, look, I can get sort of notification and alerting in real time from your solution to understand where there might be a problem, and I can have 100% coverage. But when I know there is a problem, the next step is to try and find a representation of that problem. And in more times than not, what happens is that customers go into a tracing tool that they've been using, and they're unable to find the right transaction. The reason for that is what existing vendors have done is because they were limited by the resources on the host on which the agent resided. they essentially captured samples of traces randomly. So in other words, they would say, I'm gonna capture 1% of all transactions, or I'm gonna capture 100 transactions per minute. And what that ends up doing is you capture a lot of random samples, mostly noise, and you're unable to find the right trace for that customer that's complaining or for the service which is experiencing higher than expected P99 latency. The biggest thing we've done around this area is apply our analytics capabilities, and we're introducing an architecture that we refer to as no sample. The idea there is that rather than doing random sampling, we're going to basically observe 100% of your transactions, and it's observed by what a component called the smart gateway that lives in the customer environment. And then we dynamically baseline.
And this is in the customer's VPC?
This is in the customer's VPC. Yeah.
Okay,
it lives
cool.
closer to the application,
right.
But it is not on the host itself.
Cool.
All the hosts send transactions to, all spans from all hosts go to the smart gateway. We then dynamically baseline what normal looks like, and normal could keep changing based on the application structure, based on what you're pushing in code. So that dynamic baselining happens based on what is normal around this time frame. And then we're able to. I have
a question when you get finished.
Yeah,
come back to it.
Yeah, and then what we do is once we dynamically baseline, we then identify things that are outliers, right? So the outliers generally are traces that are longer than usual, so higher than expected latency, traces that are erroneous, and in many cases traces that are occurring in rare paths, because those are the three things you're looking for. Sure. When you're trying to find that one big thing or one trace or a few traces that represent the problem you're facing.
Got it. Now, explain to me more about how baselines change and what you do with the baseline as it does change.
Yeah, so our smart gateway is built on, our data science team has done a lot of work in creating the algorithms we use in the smart gateway. What essentially happens is that we give a lot of, we create essentially distributions for trace identities and span identities, and then we track these identities over time, and then we give weightage to more recent things as opposed to things that might be, let's say, 6 months old. So that's how it gets adaptive based on much more recent data, as opposed to saying like this is normal over, let's say, last year, right? So we give a lot more weightage to recent data there. In addition to that, though, and from an analytics perspective, there's sort of collecting the right data. Right. So that's sort of step one. There's a few more things that we're doing on the analysis side, because it's not enough to keep the right data. Right. The next thing is, the ability for the customer to slice and dice that data any which way they want. And we have complete flexibility in the tool to not only look at data by service or endpoint or operation name or any tag you've added, whether that's organizational ID, customer ID, etc. And then we come up with a service map, a latency distribution, and a set of traces that match your query. More importantly, though, what we have is we still found customers, even with the right data collected, struggling with trying to find that matching trace that would reflect the root cause of the problem they were looking at. So what we've come up with, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, and the problem with random sampling is that sometimes you don't have the sample that reflects the root cause.
Yeah.
And yours is different.
Yeah, so that's different, but I think like in addition to that, let's say we keep the right data, then it's about can you help a customer understand patterns at an aggregate level. So let's say I've kept 100 traces for the problem you're looking at. If in prior solutions you would have to go look at each one of those traces one by one and see if there are common patterns across those. What we've done is there's a functionality called Outlier Analyzer where we analyze the long tail traces, and then we give you a set of operations and a set of tags that are contributing a lot more to your long tail traces. So for example, if you've got a canary that you've pushed that exists in, is contributing a lot more latency, we can tell you that by looking at the longest, traces. Or it could be a customer ID. So that's sort of step two. Step one was collecting the right data. Step two is analyzing that, to reflect what the problem is. And then lastly, when you get to the final few set of traces based on the Outlier Analyzer, one question we got from customers was, when I look at a trace, it's not easy for me to understand if this is normal. In other words, like if a few spans contribute a lot to this particular trace, is that normal? Right? Should I cause an alarm? Should I ping the service owner? So with our metrics capabilities, what we're able to do, because the smart gateway metricizes all the spans and traces, we're able to tell you in the product, when you look at a trace or a trace group, that what normal looks like, so what is a P50 for that trace. what's a P90, what's a P99.
Gotcha.
So looking at a trace or a span, we can tell you how far from normal it is and if it's deviating from normal. So you can understand. Then the way you would use this is you would say, well, hang on, there was a service owner that pushed code yesterday or an hour before, and now I'm seeing a set of traces that are reflected by the Outlier Analyzer that mention that are essentially telling me that the longer traces have that canary, and then you can go into the trace itself to understand what the pattern for that trace has been and what spans are contributing a lot more.
So something that's anomalous could be caused by increased customer activity as well as a problem, and this will make that clear to
or it could be introduced by a service owner, right? The whole point is, by not having these functionalities, you're essentially looking at trying to find a needle in a haystack,
right?
And more times than not, you end up not finding the needle. You sort of brush around the issue, and what we think of internally is it's not a complete analogy, but in some ways it's true, which is that when customers are having big problems and you're an application or a service owner, rather than actually finding the issue by having the right tools, you end up doing the equivalent of let's say a Windows restart, right? Mm-hmm. There's not a blue screen in this world, but essentially saying, I'm going to restart this service because I don't know what's going on, and you're essentially sort of pushing the problem further down and hoping that it'll fix itself.
Right. Now, Microservices APM was released into general availability a week ago. It's been in beta for a while. Yeah. What are your customers telling you about what they're learning from using the product?
Yeah. So let me talk to you about a few of our customers. We had a dozen customers in our beta. One was one of the biggest sports retailers in the world that essentially stopped using APM a while back. And the reason they stopped using APM was because they're essentially having launches on their mobile app, which last a few minutes, about 3 minutes, and they generate high millions of dollars in those launches. So their ability to use an APM agent was already done by, they were already given up on that, and they were using SignalFx as a way to understand, with the metrics platform, as a way to understand what's going on in that distributed environment at a very, very low latency level with our metrics platform. In addition to that, what they were doing was they were logging end-to-end requests into their logging system, and they were logging 100% of those. And so when we had this engagement with them early on, where we were basically talking to customers, when we asked them, why are you saving 100% of these? Right. And the reason they told us was because I don't want to miss that trace. When I need it, when a customer is having a problem, when my launch is happening, I need 100% of traces. Mm-hmm. And the way they solved the problem was they essentially putting everything into logs, throwing money at the problem and hoping that by collecting all data, I will be able to see that trace. Rather than do that, we've basically worked with them and we've essentially created the smart gateway where, yes, we will see 100%, but there is no reason to keep 100%. So now you're doing things much more efficiently. You're keeping the right traces, the ones you will need. You'll never miss the trace that you need. But also we have metrics. In addition to that, when we sort of worked on Outlier Analyzer, they told us, hey, you just saved somebody 90 minutes on call because now they don't have to go into their logging system and find out what the problem might be. You're analyzing patterns for us, and you're telling us what's different than normal. So it's been hugely positive from a customer perspective. And there's another example. So this is a big, enterprise customer doing digital transformation.
Sure.
We've got two sets of customers in general. The enterprise customer that's going down the digital transformation path, and I just spoke about that. The second one is, cloud native startups. So, the example there would be, there's a company called Drift, which is a real-time engagement platform. They've got 100 million messages exchanged on that platform every day. So real-time matters a lot to them. And they were pretty active in the beta program. They're using us in all of their production services at this point. And what they told us was, they immediately, by introducing Microservices APM, they were able to find a big caching issue where they expected things to be cached, but they weren't getting cached, and they saw a huge span in the set of traces, and they also knew whether it was normal or not, and if it had changed because somebody introduced a change, and they fixed that, and now they have much better latency attribution than they had in the past. Great. So a lot of experiences, but those two have been primarily really good customer feedback loops.
Fantastic news. That having been said, what is next for you, Microservices APM and SignalFx as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, look, the the adoption of cloud as a platform is only going to increase. Right. We're basically, from our perspective, over the last 5 years, cloud is essentially the new normal.
Of course, there's no going back from this.
Right, there's no going back. Secondly, the reason people adopt cloud is because they want faster time to market, agility, scalability. So the second trend with that is, microservices and distributed services.
Sure.
Right. So this is an increasingly increasingly normal trend, and our vision is essentially to be the best monitoring platform for these new environments. So it's not just the hyperscale companies that can push code faster, innovate faster, and bring new innovative products, but our mission is to bring that ability and that scalability to every company that's software oriented in the world. And we're going to keep investing a lot on our analytics side. On the data collection side, like I said, things are commoditized, whether that's metrics or traces. We keep pushing the boundaries on analytics and data science, and that's where we think the value comes in by applying analytics and alerting. And we're going to keep pushing that both on the metrics and tracing going forward.
Fantastic. That is just about all the time that we have. I'm Eric Brady. This is Bright Talk. We're live at reInvent 2018. My guest today has been Mohit Mehta. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eric.
And thanks to the Bright Talk team, and thanks to all of you out there. Have a great afternoon. We got to go. Bye-bye.